Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are, because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and Mud City is flirting with disaster. Yeah. All right. So shaking off some literal and figurative cobwebs, I think I found a really amazing story revolving around the creation of the Baltimore Young Families Success Fund. Right, this guaranteed income pilot project that Brandon Scott, the intrepid mayor of Baltimore City, launched last week. And it's going to be a 2-year pilot program. All right, so let's take a look at the webpage that they have set up for this fund, right? And so it opens with a quote from the intrepid mayor, Brandon Scott. And it says, "To ensure the economic security and dignity of Baltimoreans, particularly given our legacy as the birthplace of redlining, we must be willing to invest in bold solutions like guaranteed income." Now, this is kind of interesting because, it says the economic security and dignity. There's nothing secure about this project. They're taking it away after 2 years. It's only a 2-year thing, right? So there's no real security in it, at least at the onset, right? And dignity, what does dignity mean? How does one define dignity? But I like that the mayor calls Baltimore the birthplace of redlining. And so what redlining is that's the practice of denying someone a loan based on where they live with poor property value. Like if you live in a ghetto, you're not getting a loan, right? That's, I guess the bankers call this redlining. And it was apparently created in Baltimore, according to Brandon Scott. And so applications for this program open on May 2nd, 2022. That's a lot of twos to see right there. And so it says that the Baltimore Young Families Success Fund is a guaranteed income pilot project that will provide 200 young parents, interesting choice of words there, between 18 and 24 years old with an unconditional cash payment of $1,000 per month over the course of 24 months. So a 2-year program, $1,000 a month to 200 young parents. Not families, but parents. You have to keep that distinction in mind, right? Because this is the Baltimore Young Families Success Fund. Being a parent doesn't necessarily make you a member of a family. So they're giving these 200 young parents this guaranteed income. So now I don't know if anyone really needs to be told what guaranteed income is or universal income or anything like that. And I think I first became aware of what this was in the lead up to the presidential election of 2016. Right? I think that was the first time I really ever heard this idea floated out there. It's an interesting idea, and I'm not really here to comment on it politically or anything like that, but I'm just kind of curious, is this a good idea considering what Baltimore is? Why do they think this is a good idea for Baltimore? And so I found this article here in Baltimore Magazine, I guess online. It says, "Can a guaranteed income help Baltimore's young families level up?" And it was published on 4/20. And the cynicist in me makes me just want to joke that this $1,000 per month is really the discretionary fund for these youngsters. Thank you for agreeing with me on that. For these youngsters to just buy their legal weed with. Right? Yeah, I don't know. Just a joke, people. Right? Just a joke. All right, so now this is really an amazing photograph of the press conference. Right? I don't know who all these people are lined up along the back here. Right? But we have 2 mask wearers here. Right? The mayor is not wearing a mask. Yet what is going on with the sign language lady? Why does she have to wear this hideous clear mask? What is that? Is this really necessary in 2022? Couldn't she just stand, couldn't she just have stood a couple feet over or maybe over here maybe? I don't know. It's just really strange to me. I don't know. Why was this the photograph for this article? It just cracks me up. All right, so what this article talks about, this new pilot project here, the new $5.5 million guaranteed income pilot program. It's money to fill in the gaps and cover basic necessities that many families might take for granted. All right, now I love this closing bit here because it so subtly plays on the guilty conscience, right? That's the beauty of language and its spellcraft, right? It's not a bold-faced accusation that you should suffer from guilt, but, it does say that you might be taking it for granted if you're not worried about covering your bills, And so now starting on May 2nd, as I said, 200 parents or guardians, and again, it's just interesting, it's not families, it's parents or guardians, ages 18 to 24, and this is the most amazing part, who earn up to 300% of the federal poverty line, which is $27,750 for a family of 4. And now, so what does that mean? I don't know. 300% of the poverty line. So is that like $84,000 that they get to earn and still qualify for this $1,000 a month? I'm not sure what that means, but that's, I don't know how to read it otherwise, but not being an economist or whatever, but that's just what that makes me think, Again, this is all just open speculation anyway, right? And Baltimore isn't the first to have fun with these pilot programs, right? So it says here that Baltimore will just be the latest city to test whether modestly padding an insufficient social safety net can demonstrably boost quality of life for families in need. And now again, the language is unbelievable. Insufficient social safety net. What does that mean? Social safety nets, where did they come from? And so Mayor Scott, last February, Mayor Scott joined Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, a growing coalition of city leaders committed to providing direct cash payments as a base income floor for citizens in need. And so now, always looking for deeper connections to these things, especially into Mud City, especially with Baltimore and the Mud City paradigm puzzle tree. When I put MGI into a gematria calculator, right, in simple gematria, it gives us an 11. Right? And so these programs, the one in Baltimore and one of these other, like this coalition of 62 member cities, right, and 28 cities have already launched or completed one of these pilot programs. Right? And so these programs, literally, these Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, this is the gateway to the guaranteed income, right? If you want to apply it to that Janus worship and if you want to use the 11s and the gematria and all of that. I mean, it's just amazing the way that you can tie these things in if you want to, right? Just all about having fun. And so critics have long derided such cash payments as misguided handouts that could suppress recipients' commitments to working, right? But early research has shown promising results that say otherwise. All right, so now this is the interesting thing about results and research and, what is promising and what could be misleading and the examples that they give. This is where the story just gets crazy, right? The first example they give is Stockton, California, right? Where a pioneering 2-year, $500 per month pilot program recently finished. But it says that the study found participating families had more full-time employment than before the program began, and compared to non-recipient families, better financial stability and overall improved moods. Right, so it says that critics have long derided such cash payments as misguided handouts that could suppress recipients' commitment to keep working. Right, but early research has shown promising results that say otherwise. Right, and so now this is where the story just gets crazy. Right, because it gets into the nature of research and results and how they can be interpreted, right? And then the examples that they give me, right? This is really amazing here, right? And so they start with Stockton, California, where a pioneering 2-year, $500 per month pilot program recently finished. This study found that participating families had more full-time employment than before the program began, and compared to non-recipient families, better financial stability and overall improved moods. Right, of course, right? You gave them $500, right? Their improved mood comes from that endorphins. You give them $500, they give them a happy boost. So it says early results out of tiny Hudson, New York, which did the same thing, $500 per month to families, showed a doubling and improved health and relationship outcomes among recipients. And so now this is great, right? Okay, so, again, as statistics and research, so it can be manipulated to reflect what you want it to reflect, right? They're showing success here, right? But what is it about the success here that makes them think that will translate to Baltimore, right? Because Baltimore is a very different beast than Stockton, California, right? And tiny Hudson, New York. And the demographic is going to make all the difference in the world here too, right? Because Baltimore City is earmarking these funds for the young, the 18 to 24-year-old parents. And so what this article is failing to tell us, and what I'm sure every article and argument for these types of programs, at least here in Baltimore City anyway, is failing to tell us, right, is that these 200 parents and guardians age 18 to 24 are being culled from a pool of the most poorly educated people maybe in the history of America, if not the world, right? And I'm not even joking, right? The local Fox affiliate here in Baltimore has something they call Project Baltimore, in which they expose the corruption of Baltimore City public schools. All right, and so just looking at some of these headlines real quick. Baltimore lawmaker unaware of ghost student funding scandal. I don't read every bill. Right, this was on April 4th, 2022, right, just earlier this month. And so what's been happening is that the Baltimore City Public Schools have been billing the city for phantom students. You know, they're making up students saying they're going to their school, giving them phony grades and stuff to keep that funding coming in. You know, funding that is padding the CEO's earnings. Right? Baltimore City Schools CEO earnings soars to $375,688 as student performance drops. And now this is the thing, because staggering learning loss in Maryland, and especially in Baltimore, but it says 85% of Maryland students tested were not proficient in math. Right, so now these are major scandals that have been happening in Baltimore City. Not only just like this with this, but like the GPAs of students that they've been graduating are under 1. There are people graduating with like a 0.3 GPA. A staggering number of kids are coming out of the Baltimore City public education system not being able to read or write or do math. It is absolutely crazy. Yet this is the demographic they want to give this $1,000 a month to. You know, and it's what this program is kind of looking like. It's almost looking like an apology to some of these kids. You know, here's some money for the education we didn't give you to help you survive because we did not provide you with the basic skills to survive, to financially manage yourself, you know, to find employment and manage your bills or whatever. I mean, it's just really kind of unbelievable. You know, this is the uphill battle that this program faces in Baltimore City. These kids, you know, are they going to know how to handle this kind of income? And it really does very little to address what will actually create success for these young families, and that's creating families and not parents. The statistics on two-parent families in urban communities are atrocious. It is absolutely crazy, right? Only 17% of African American children reach 17 in a family with their married biological parents. In the state of Maryland, it's only 21% of black teenagers reach 17 in a family with both their biological parents. In 2012, 26% of American children lived in a home without a father. Right? And in Baltimore, among African American children, that rate is 69%. 7 out of 10 African American children in Baltimore don't have fathers. You know, that statistic should say it all. In 2013, it was 72% of all births to black women occurred outside of marriage. 72%. You know, if they want pilot programs and financial safety nets and so forth to actually benefit its targeted demographic, you know, they need to be building families and not catering to parents. Catering to parents is not building family, you know? And I think that's, you know, something that's not being looked at here in this. And the fact that these kids are so poorly educated, you know, do they have the skills, the abilities to responsibly use these funds, you know? And what is it about the success of these other programs makes them think that this is going to work in Baltimore? What kind of screening is this application process capable of when the data shows that those who will be applying won't even be able to read the application? You know, how are they going to guarantee the success of this program in Baltimore? Or how can they? How can they guarantee the success of this program in Baltimore with literacy numbers the way they are in this city? Right? Because you know they're banking on the success of this program. You know, they really want it to succeed here in Baltimore, so the application process is going to be very important. Who they give this money to. And as discussed, you know, it's possible that some of the recipients of this money could be making $80,000+ a year. Yeah, as unbelievable as that sounds. And again, somebody tell me if I have read that wrong. So what is it about the success of this program in Stockton, California, and in tiny Hudson, New York? Where are they? What was it about the success of these programs that they feel will translate to Baltimore City? Do the recipients of this free money suffer from the same illiteracy and math deficiencies that they do here in Baltimore City, at least among the targeted age groups? How impacted by drugs and gangs and murder were these recipients in Stockton and Hudson? And how do the populations between these three cities compare? And now you would think that the link to the Stockton study Baltimore Magazine supplies would lead to some statistical data supporting their claim of the program's success. But it doesn't. Right? I mean, you click on it, and it leads to this NPR transcription of an interview with a lone Stockton program participant. That's it. Just one person's testimonial of how the program helped them. This is not empirical data. Right? This is just one person's testimony, this Zona Everett. And it's interesting, right off the bat, she says, I didn't realize I needed help until I had the help, so that makes me kind of think that maybe she felt she was doing okay in life. Sure, she wasn't rich or anything, but her bills were getting paid. She didn't have to worry about her heat or anything like that. I don't know. That's what it makes me think when she says she didn't realize she needed help. And then bang, they're giving her 500 extra bucks. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. But again, not empirical data. This one interview isn't anything that should be used as proof that it's going to succeed in Baltimore. And so I wanted to take a closer look at Stockton, California, to see how it measures up to Baltimore and how this program may have played out there. So let's do a little apples to apples comparison between Stockton and Baltimore. And so Stockton is about half the size of Baltimore, coming in at about 321,000 population-wise in 2020. And so the ethnic breakdown of Stockton, and it's 321,000, and this diversity in Stockton is what makes the dispensation of this guaranteed income so interesting, and how it could correlate to Baltimore, right? Because Stockton, California, believe it or not, is the most diverse city in America, as we'll see coming down the line. But, there really is a fair ratio of all the sort of races in Stockton, right? If any of this holds true to today, we're looking at, we're sitting at 37% white and 22% non-Hispanic whites, which is, I don't know how to interpret that, right? 12% black or African American, and then the Hispanic and Latino race is 40%, making up the majority of Stockton, California, and the Asians not far behind the non-Hispanic whites at 21.5%, right? Really racially diverse. Much more ethnically diverse than Baltimore City. And we've talked about this before, right? Baltimore is over 60% black, it's less than 30% white, and the rest are all there, but it's less than 5% of the population. And so empirically, Baltimore is just not all that diverse. So just in the disbursement alone, you're going to see some differences between the two cities based on this. Because Stockton's disbursement is not earmarked for the youth movement. In Stockton, their guaranteed income went to 125 randomly selected people. And I love that in Stockton, the program was sponsored by the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration, or SEED, right? Because they're just planting, right? And they get their money from the co-founder of Facebook you never hear about, Chris Hughes. Now that's very interesting. And they claim great success for this program in Stockton, California. But they gave their money to a wide variety of people. At least as far as age and race are concerned, they only had 125 people, and it was at random. So, just looking at it, logic I think would dictate that so the Hispanics are going to get more of those 125 dispensations, right? And then the whites, and then the non-Hispanic whites, and so it's going to be the African Americans who are going to see the least amount of these in a fair random disbursement, and again, I don't know necessarily how it plays out there, but it also plays across a wide variety of age groups. A 50 or 60-year-old person getting this $500 extra a month, is going to be perhaps a lot smarter with it than, the 18-year-old or the even dare say 30 or 35-year-old with it. Who knows? I just don't see how you can directly compare these results because I don't understand what it is about the success of a guaranteed income program that dispersed its funds to a wide variety of ages and ethnicities that makes it a good indicator of success for a more targeted disbursement, which are not targeted, especially this target group, who it's unfortunate to say is just one of the most challenged groups in the country. It's extremely interesting that they're so confident that this program will have success here. But there are some similarities between the two cities. Because for what it is, Stockton is not a very safe place to live, as evidenced by this list here. And so in 2010, it tied with Montgomery, Alabama as the most obese metropolitan area in the country. And in 2012, Forbes found it the 8th most miserable U.S. city, as well as the 10th most dangerous. Now, I don't know where Baltimore kind of ranked on that list in 2012, but I can guarantee you they had about 300 murders that year because they average almost one a day in this city. Right? And from what I saw in Stockton, the highest it ever got was 72 in a year. Right? But again, still, it's a half the population and a very ethnically diverse group. So kind of interesting, the numbers of homicides that one year. But that was an astronomical high for them from what I see. They average about 30. All right, so now taking all of this in, I can definitely see, some similarities there and why perhaps they may think that some of these recipients may react the same. I mean, there's something there, I guess, a little bit of smoke, maybe. And are those similarities enough? And what about tiny Hudson, New York? They had success too, right? So that must mean Baltimore will as well, right? And so this is where the comparisons get silly because Hudson, and I love how Warren Street in Hudson here looks like it could be in any neighborhood in Baltimore or in just about any city in the Northeast Corridor. Even Richmond, York, Pennsylvania, Waterbury, Connecticut, and they all have streets, blocks that look like this. But this is pretty much where the similarities end because Hudson is tiny, right? It's got a population of just under 6,000, and it kind of breaks down as a reverse of Baltimore, right? It's got about a 60% white, 25% African American, 0.5% Native American, 8% Asian, and, so I mean, again, it looks, it's like a reverse Baltimore. So who got this $500 in Hudson? That they feel confident that their success here will translate to Baltimore. And so in Hudson, it says that the program started in 2020 with 25 low-income recipients receiving $500 a month for 5 years. So this is a nice long-term one, or longer than 2 years anyway, as they're going to roll it out in Baltimore, and half, which again is smarter than Baltimore. Right, so it says that 1 year in, or in 2021, the program inducted a new cohort of 50. So at 75 coming into 2022, and who knows, it could be more than that by now. But the only qualifier I could find for who got the money was that they had to earn less than $35,000 a year, which, as we saw, was actually higher than the poverty level at just under $28,000 for a family of 4. So that's kind of interesting. Again, people who are making not the worst money were perhaps qualifying for this in favor of people who weren't making any money. I don't know how it worked. It's just, again, it's all just kind of open speculation and kind of being curious about how this system worked. But again, I'm imagining a wider net of disbursement here than just the 18 to 24-year-old group that Baltimore is looking to give this to. The success of the program in the Hudson couldn't have anything to do with that. Could it? Again, just who got the money? Was it, more educated people? I mean, presumably they're better educated in Hudson, right? And so, I don't know, but something just doesn't feel right about this program in Baltimore because of one of the examples used to demonstrate how successful these programs are. And that's the pilot program they ran out of Stockton, California. And so now I don't know if any of you have caught on to this yet, but this is one thing about the story that has absolutely blown my mind and really challenged my faith in what the heck I'm doing in Mud City and Baltimore with this thing, because it cannot be a coincidence that Stockton, California, which had one of the 2 pilot programs that this article in Baltimore Magazine talks about as demonstrating the success of these guaranteed income programs, Stockton, California, isn't named after John Stockton. Oh no. Stockton, California is named after U.S. Naval Commodore Robert Stockton, whose grandfather just so happened to be Richard Stockton, right? The famous trustee of Princeton, the man who drafted a plan for a U.S. government independent of Parliament but loyal to the crown, and that King George rejected. Of course he did. Right? And he was mentor to the General Joseph Reed, forgotten founding father and signer of the Declaration of Independence, and grandfather to William Bradford Reed, Diplomat extraordinaire, U.S. broker of the Tenston Treaty that opened up China, and father to Mr. William Reed née Emily McKim. Are you kidding me? I can connect Baltimore's Guaranteed Income Program of 2022 to my story of this High Priestess of Diana and her coven of witches, right? And the tableau parties of 1870-ish? How is that? I don't know what this means, but it cannot be a coincidence, right? The past and the present are intimately connected in Mud City and Baltimore. And so to close this one out with a fun little but not really too closely related cherry, when I was doing my due diligence on Hudson, New York, I came across the Hudson Bay Company, which was a fur trading company set up in 1670, and it pretty much controlled all of the Hudson Bay drainage basin. Right? This whole huge swath of Canada here was owned by the Hudson Bay Trading Company. And this was known as Rupert's Land, right? And Rupert was James I's grandson, and he was close kin with the King's Charles. Right? He was nephew to one and cousin to the other. Right? So this is allegedly what he looked like. And when I first saw this picture, I was like, oh my God, he looks just like the Stash. Right? This is Lenny Calvert. Only Rupert looks like a slightly older, more roughed up, beat up version of Lenny here. Right? Here we have a good looking young man, and here we have him having seen better days, and he certainly looks like he's partied a little too hard, but look at this. They have the same dimpled chin, like the same stash, the same long nose. All right? I don't know. How closely related were they? How closely related are their bloodlines? Or maybe they just had the same model. I mean, because they would have been like about, maybe 50, maybe about 30 to 40 years apart. I don't know. I didn't look that up for this. But I just thought that was just too fun an observation not to share and to close this one out. Remember, guys, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies, right? And so, until the next one, cheers.